Hi, welcome to Train Signal. My name's Bill, and this lesson is the Managed Metadata Service Application. Whew, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Well, we're going to go ahead and in this lesson, we'll take a look at our Managed Metadata Service Application. I'll show you what it does, how to work with it, how to go ahead and manage it, and we'll even show you how to go ahead and create it. Now, in our installation of SharePoint, our Managed Metadata Service Application has already been created. That's because when we ran the Farm Configuration Wizard, it was one of the service applications that we had checked to go ahead and have SharePoint do for us. So it's already there. We don't have to go back and create another one. Now, I am going to show you how to go ahead and create one at the end of the lesson in case you want to go back and add additional instances of our Managed Metadata Service application. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, so why don't we go ahead and just get started. The first thing you're probably wondering is, well, what exactly is managed metadata? Now, in quotes here, I have the definition from Microsoft. It is managed metadata is a hierarchical collection of centrally managed terms that you can define and then use as attributes for items in SharePoint Server 2013. All right, did that clear that up? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Let's go ahead and let's break this down a little bit more. Basically, metadata is data about data. It's information about your data. And managed metadata's primary purpose is to provide you with a central location to store that metadata so that it can be utilized throughout any site within your SharePoint farm. Now, when we're talking about metadata, there's a couple of things that we need to understand first. One of which is terms. And quite simply, a term is a word or a phrase that can be associated with an item in SharePoint Server 2013. And term sets, which is simply a collection of related terms. Now, in our SharePoint Server 2013, you can specify that a column must contain a term from a specific term set. Now, if you don't understand about columns yet, we will later on in a future lesson when we talk about lists and libraries. But just think of it as a way to go ahead and add information about a particular item in our SharePoint, whether it's a list item, a library item, whatever it is. The Managed Metadata Service publishes what's called a term store. Basically, it identifies the database where these terms and term sets will live, so that SharePoint, through the service connection, can then go ahead and consume or use these terms and term sets. Now, if you're still a little bit confused about terms and term sets, don't worry about it right now. It'll all become clear when we go ahead and actually start working with them and see them in action. Now, managed terms are usually predefined. They can only be created by users with the appropriate permissions. So if you're wondering where these terms and term sets come from, they have to be created by somebody. An administrator, a site collection administrator, a power user, a site owner, manager, whoever you give that permission to. And don't worry, we will see this. We're going to go ahead and assign permission to somebody so that they can go ahead and create terms and term sets. And typically, these terms and term sets are organized into a hierarchy. And again, we'll see all of that in just a few minutes. Now, we also have the ability to add enterprise keywords. These are words or phrases that were added to SharePoint items, and they are part of a single non-hierarchical term set that is called the keywords set. Now, the difference between this and our managed metadata is basically this. The managed metadata is controlled. We create the terms, we create the term sets, we dictate that what terms are going to be used. The enterprise keywords are added just by your users. You don't have to use this if you don't want to. If you want a more controlled set of terms, you simply turn off the ability to use enterprise keywords. But if you want your users to go ahead and create their own keywords, their own search terms that they can look for things by, you enable this. And again, enterprise keywords are part of a single non-hierarchical term set that is named the keyword set. So there's not groups of term sets or keyword sets. There's just one, and they all kind of go in there as they're added. And all of this metadata, all of these terms are very useful to us because it gives us more information about our items. Information that we can use to go ahead and group things together so we can organize things better. It helps us search for things, helps us navigate through our SharePoint, and really helps to make SharePoint a much fuller, easier to use, and richer tool for our day-to-day business. Okay, so here we are in Central Administration, and if we want to go ahead and manage our Managed Metadata Service application, we'll simply go under Application Management and click on Manage Service Applications. And here is our list of the service applications that we have up and running. Remember, we've seen this before. And there is our Managed Metadata Service. And it's here once again because we selected this service application to be created when we went ahead and ran the farm configuration wizard. And we see the Managed Metadata Service and the Service Connection. You have two separate things, two lines here. Now, we want to select the Managed Metadata Service, but I'm not going to click here. You see I've got the little blue line, that link? That'll take me to the window where I can manage my Managed Metadata Service. And we'll get there eventually, but right now I'm going to click out here to the right of the name. See, I've got that nice blue highlight. That's going to allow me to see all of my options up here on my ribbon. And I want to take a look at a couple of those. You'll see here, New. This is where we could go ahead and create a new Managed Metadata Service app, and we're going to do that a little bit later. Connect will allow us to connect this service to another farm. Delete will go ahead and let me delete this instance of the Managed Metadata Service. I don't want to do that. Manage, like we said, it's going to give me to the management window, the term store management. Administrators. Now this one we want to go ahead and take a look at. And you'll see it brings us here to the Administrators for Managed Metadata Service page. Now this is where we can go ahead and we can add Managed Metadata Service administrators. We can delete them. And the MMS administrators, like this paragraph says right up here, they are users who have the rights to manage this service application. They'll be given the access to central administration, and they can do things like connect this service application to other farms. They can go ahead and add administrators. They can remove them. And you'll see right now the SP admin is the only one here. And I'm signed in as the SP admin right now. And you'll notice that my permissions are full control. And the options are full control or no control. And quite honestly, if you don't give them full control, it's much the same as not giving them any permission at all. Now, if I wanted to add another MMS administrator, let's say I want to add Jen Owens, I can just add her like that. It finds her, adds her, and then I assign those permissions. And of course, just as easily, I can remove her. Now, the MMS administrator is not the same as a term store administrator. And we're going to look at that in just a few minutes. The term store administrator has the ability to manage and add those terms and term sets, whereas in this case, unless I went ahead and specifically made the SP admin a term store administrator, as the SP admin, I wouldn't be able to go ahead and add any terms or manage the term store. So right now, the SP admin only has the ability to manage the metadata service app. And that's fine. That's all we need to do. It's all this person really needs to have. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. Properties, let's take a look at that. And you see it opens up this window, and it's the Create New Managed Metadata Service window. And we'll see this again later, but all of these things won't be filled out. We have to go ahead and fill them in. This has to do with the Managed Metadata Service that's already existing. It gives us the name, tells us where our database server is, the name of the database that holds our term store, which authentication we've used, whether or not we have a failover database server, and we can add these in here later on if we needed to, which application pool we're using, the default, and it also allows us to connect the Managed Metadata Service to a content type hub. Now, we haven't talked about content types at all. And content types is a pretty deep and pretty involved topic. Let's suffice to say for now that our content types are simply SharePoint items that we create. We can go ahead and create our own content types and have SharePoint use them, and we can assign metadata to them. And if we're going to do this, we can have a content type hub, a centralized location, so that all of our SharePoint sites, all of our site collections, can go ahead and access those content types. All right, so let's go ahead and let's select OK, because we're not changing anything in there. Well, let's go back down to our managed metadata service once more, and let's click on Manage. Okay, so here I am at the Term Store Management tool. Now I'm signed in as the SP admin still, and as such I have no rights. I have no permissions to go ahead and manage term sets, add term sets. In fact, let's go ahead, let's take a look here. And don't get hung up on what's going on over here just yet. We're going to look at this in just a couple of minutes. But I want to show you all of my options are grayed out. I don't have permissions to do anything in here as the Managed Metadata Service Administrator. My job, in fact, let me go back here, as the Managed Metadata Service Administrator is to add term store administrators. Now sure, I could add the SP admin in here as a term store administrator, then I would have all of those permissions to work with the term sets, but you're most likely not going to want to do that. You're probably going to want to have the site collection admin or the site owner or perhaps a power user with some elevated permissions, somebody who knows what's going on with the site. In fact, let's go ahead now and let's add myself, Bill Coulterman, in as the term store administrator. There we go. Now, one thing, and you can't see it here, but let me make my scroll out a little bit here, make my resolution a little bit smaller, and you'll see this big save button down here in the lower right corner. You need to go ahead and click that. We have to save this, or when we come back, I'm not going to be the term store administrator anymore. Let's go ahead and save. It'll refresh. There we go. Now I've been added as the term store administrator. Now we mentioned earlier that you have the ability to go ahead and have multiple instances of the Managed Metadata Service app. In fact, theoretically, you could have one for every single site collection, to which you could then have a separate term store administrator for each of those site collections as well. So one person managing each term store rather than having one person manage all of the term stores. So depending on how many term stores you have, how many site collections, how many instances of the MMS that you created, it's probably a lot easier for one person to manage one term store than one person to have to manage 10, 20, 100, 1,000 of them, whatever the case may be. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to go over to our GlobalMantic's main intranet site, sign in as Bill Coulterman, and we will look once again at the term store management tool from there, from our site settings on our main intranet site, and you'll see it's the exact same thing that we see here, but now because I have been added as the term store administrator, I will have the permissions to do everything over here with the terms and the term sets that I want to show you next. So let's move along. All right, so here we are. We're at the GlobalMantic's main intranet site, and let's go. You'll see that I am signed in as myself, as Bill Coulterman. Let's go down here to Settings, Site Settings, and we'll scroll down just a little bit under Site Administration and see the Term Store Management link. Let's click there, and hey, see exactly what I told you. It's very familiar, isn't it? It's because it's the same place, the same exact tool that we saw in Central Administration. In fact, if we click back there, you'll see, but now we are listed here as the Term Store Administrator, and now we can go ahead and do what we need to do. So the first thing we want to look at over here on the right side in the General section, we have Available Service Applications, and there's our instance of the Managed Metadata Service. It's a drop-down list, but there's no other things to choose from it, that's because we only have the one instance of our managed metadata service. If we created more of them, they would all be here in this list. We'll talk about importing a little bit later. We see our term store administrator. Default language is English. If we wanted to add more language packs, we could certainly go ahead and pick those and install them. But most of the work we're going to do is going to be right over here in our taxonomy term store. And basically, taxonomy, it just means managed metadata. It's what we've been talking about. Now you'll see that we have some groups already. People and search dictionaries. And if we go ahead, let's expand people. These, department, job title, and location, are term sets. And some of these can be expanded. And you'll see that we have terms, operations, and trainer. And we can add more terms and term sets. In fact, let's go ahead and let's do that. We'll start up here at the Managed Metadata Service. Notice I have a little drop-down arrow. And when I click on it, it gives me one option, Create New Group. And see that? It went ahead and put that down here. Now this is our main intranet site. So the term set that we're going to create, the group and the term sets that we're going to create have to do around our benefits. People are going to come to the intranet site to find out more about our company benefits. So we are going to call this group benefits. And see that? We get a whole new window with information about those benefits. And we can go ahead and add a description, another manager, and contributors, people that we allow to go ahead and add terms and term sets to this group. But notice that I have another drop-down next to that new group, benefits, where I can create a new term set. So this one we will call insurance. And again, same thing. We can give it a description, a contact email, stakeholders, and notice now we have this option, submission policy. And like it says, when a term set is closed, only metadata managers can add terms to this term set. When it's open, users can add terms from a tagging application. In other words, people can add their own terms to this term set. And again, this, whether you choose this or not, there's no right, there's no wrong. It all depends on what you need. Do you want to allow people to add terms, or do you want to have a more closely controlled set of terms? And it all depends on what your needs are. For now, we're going to just leave this as closed. And from our term set, we are going to go ahead and create a new term. This one we will call life insurance. And as you can imagine, we would probably want to add another one, let's say for health insurance. And of course I can continue to add them for dental, for vision, whatever it is, family, whatever you want. So we created a new group, a new term set, and some new terms. And I can go here and add more terms under existing term sets. Finance. Let's add another one, say HR. And of course I could continue on with things like IT, whatever it is, whatever I wanted. And as I get down to my terms, I have the ability to allow people to use it to tag an item with that term or not. And again, that all depends upon your needs. If we had multiple languages, we could select the language, add descriptions, and even enter synonyms. Now let's go ahead and let's select one of our term sets. And notice that we have some other tabs up here. Again, we can allow people to use this for tagging. We can allow this term set for site navigation and also for faceted navigation, which, like it says, will allow our users to configure contextual refiners along with our managed navigation. And now this is only going to work if you have enabled automatically created managed properties as refiners, and you're going to have to do that in the Search Service Applications Search Administration page in Central Administration. We have an option to custom sort. which would allow us to use a custom sort order if we wanted the terms to appear in a certain order, and custom properties to again add additional data about a particular term set. All right, so now let's go ahead down here and take a look at system. Remember we talked about the enterprise keywords. Well, there they are. And there are none in here. And as you can see under here with the description, this term set contains all of the terms that have been used as keywords that are not in existing term sets. And we talked about this earlier. The enterprise keywords, if it's enabled, is a way for people to go ahead and add their own keywords, their own terms to our term store. But they're not organized, they're not grouped, they're not hierarchical, they're not in a term set. They're just randomly collected in this term set here, the keyword set. And again, you see you can have that submission policy as closed or open. We also have hashtags, which just like the keywords, you can have people add hashtags to the term store. And again, this can be closed or open. And orphan terms. Now, orphan terms, it's grayed out here because we don't have any. And you can read here, it's probably hard to read, so I will read it to you. This term set contains terms that were being shared in other term sets, and the owning term set was deleted. You should assign ownership of the terms. In other words, if I went ahead and deleted this department term set, and people were still using these terms, they would be orphan terms. They wouldn't have a place to live. They'd be living here. And the thing to do would be to go ahead and take those terms and add them to either an existing term set or create a new term set or group and use them in there. All right, let's go ahead. Let's collapse some of this stuff and let's take a look. Let's go back to our top level here. And you see that we have the option to import a CSV file or a UTF-8, a CSV file with term sets and terms right into our term store. So you could go ahead, you could create your term set in an Excel spreadsheet, save it as a CSV, and bring it in very simply. In fact, let's go ahead, let's take a look. We have a sample file here. Let's open it up. And we see the term set name is political geography. Gives us a description, and are they available for tagging? Yes. And description for the terms and the level in the hierarchy. Okay, let's go ahead, let's save this. I'm not exactly sure where that's saved to, so let's save it somewhere where we can find it easily. My documents. Yes, we're going to continue to use the term set. No. Let's double check and make sure that it is there. Yep, there it is. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and we need to create a new group. This one we'll call geography, since that's what our term set name was going to be called. And we will import term set. Simply need to browse, find that CSV file, and there is our term set. Pretty cool, huh? And very, very easy. Easy to set up in Excel and easy to bring in here. All right. And that is our term store and the term store management tool. All right, we're back here in Central Administration, and we're going to go ahead now and create a new Managed Metadata Service application. Let's go to our Managed Service Applications page, and up here in the upper left corner, we have the big New button. We'll click there and select from our list the Managed Metadata Service. And we have this window again. Remember, we saw that when we looked at the properties of our existing Managed Metadata Service. But we're going to create a new one, so let's give it a name. This one we'll call Globalmantics MMDS for Managed Metadata Service. Database server is fine. That's our SQL Server. The name, let's shorten it. Let's call it GM MMDS. Windows Authentication, which is recommended. That's what we'll use. We have no failover database server. We're going to use an existing application pool, but we're not going to use this one. We are going to go ahead and use the default. And all of those things are just fine. And we have no content type hub. Now, right here, do we want to report syndication import errors from site collection using this service application? Sure, that's fine. And do we want to add this service application to the farm's default list? Remember, we had that default list of service applications. I'm going to say no for this one. And we will go ahead and choose OK, because we're going to just use the existing service application. I'm actually going to go ahead, and when we're done with this, I'm actually going to delete it. So let's go ahead and click OK. And there it is, Globalmantics. And we can go ahead and look at the properties again and see that it's there. So we went ahead, we created that new instance. That's how easy it is. And we could go ahead and work with the term store in here, do whatever we want. But we don't need this managed metadata service, so we're going to simply delete it. Delete the data associated with the service application. That's exactly right. Choose OK. This shouldn't take long, and it shouldn't. There we go. Click OK. And it's gone. It's all gone. No more. And that's our managed metadata service application. And that's all for this lesson. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.